Good evening, everybody. Jack Dallas here. It's been a little while. Guys, I've been out of town for roughly a month, got back just a few short days ago. And I have to say that while I was gone, one of the things I was happy about was that I was able to maintain a pretty good foothold on the news and the headlines of the day. Obviously, the Paris terrorist attacks coming in just a couple days ago are the main headline that most people are turning their attention to today. And I have to say that part of what inspired this video I'm making right now is the simple fact that I was having a conversation with a friend about the Paris terrorist attacks, and I was asked what I thought might follow them in terms of a world event or a reaction. And one of the things that I said was that I felt that since Russia had really stepped up, roughly a month ago or just a little bit more with their airstrikes, and specifically had decided to follow through with a more air-based type of assault plan, I felt that somebody in the West, somebody in NATO, had to kind of follow suit and try to, get things together in terms of getting the air campaign back in favor of the West. And so I felt that whatever reaction happened in this given time would probably have to do with airstrikes. Now, after the Paris terrorist attacks, it's quite obvious that you would think that France would be getting more involved in the assault on, ISIS, ISIL, whatever. And we knew that they were involved in airstrikes in the past, but obviously we would expect them to be taking a bigger role. Now we can see here in this Reuters article, we've got a quote from Meet the Press. Here, we're confident that in the coming days and weeks, working with the French, we will be able to intensify our strikes against ISIL in both Syria and Iraq to make clear there is no safe haven for these terrorists. And that was Ben Rhodes, the U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor. So, obviously, in terms of the American public, this is sort of setting the stage for a more intensified conflict and a more involved conflict and more, I guess you would say, other responsibility being taken care of by America. Now, in terms of propaganda, this kind of, wording, it makes actions like increased U.S. military presence seem like it would be a matter-of-fact response, an obvious response. They're saying we will be able to intensify our strikes. So there's no debate about whether or not strikes will be intensified. There's no debate as to whether a different strategy should be pursued, but it's just a matter of whether or not we'll be able to intensify. And of course, they're saying they're confident that they'll be able to, working with the French. Now, interestingly, as I work my way down to the bottom of this article, in the very last paragraph, you'll see it's mentioning, of course, that Syria and the Western allies want Assad out, and just above here, Russia wants to keep Assad in. Well, obviously, we already know this. But what's interesting, sort of, is the UN's response to this, where you have Ban Ki-moon saying, that he welcomed the renewed sense of urgency to find a solution to the war in Syria, and adding that the world had a rare moment of diplomatic opportunity to end the violence. Well, moving on to our second link, just a short time ago, Ban Ki-moon had this to say. This is from a translation. I'm getting this from an article on Global Research. The future of President Assad must be decided by the Syrian people. Now, I do not want to interfere in the process of Vienna, but I think it is totally unfair and unreasonable that the fate of a person, and then obviously talking about Barack Obama and his position on what's going on in Syria, to paralyze all this political negotiation. This is not acceptable. It's not fair. You guys can go on to read more of that yourself, but I just thought I would bring this quote in because when I saw in that Reuters article that Ban Ki-moon was getting a little quote and that the UN was getting mentioned, I said, hey, wait a minute, wasn't Ban Ki-moon and the UN, kind of annoyed with Obama and the US's approach to sort of just deciding, country after country who the president's going to be? And it turns out that, yes, they were upset about that. So you can kind of see how more Western-leaning outlets like Reuters kind of twist the words of world leaders. Not that I feel that that legitimizes world leaders, guys, but I mean, it is kind of showing you what direction the propaganda is coming from. Now, Reuters had a follow-up article to the article talking about France increasing their airstrikes, where they were talking about this manhunt for a Belgian-born man they believe helped organize the assaults. Now, I saw this on TV just a couple days, or I should have said just a couple hours ago, where they were saying, oh, we're going after some targets in Belgium. It seems like some of the people that they feel are involved were over there. Um, I always find it suspicious, guys, just like with 9/11, and I don't want to get too much into this side of it, but it does make me feel, a bit suspicious when I hear that they have these leads so soon after events like this take place. I believe I remember reading that the first mention of Osama bin Laden after 9/11 was within, less than a minute of the event taking place or something like that, or it was on TV extremely soon. And it always kind of makes me interested to know how these people know just so quickly who is involved. And I understand that they have a lot of feelers out there and all that, but I honestly, personally believe that at this point, I would have to think that world governments, specifically in the West, are behind these events. And that's how I think that a lot of this stuff comes together. So, one of the things that I think is interesting is that if you go just like other events that have taken place in the past year, I've made this comparison. If you're in the New York Times, they're addressing the left. We've got France strikes major ISIS targets in Syria in retaliation for attacks. Moving on to the right wing of America, the Wall Street Journal, France launches airstrikes against Islamic State stronghold in Syria. So obviously, guys, they're ramping us up for more attacks, more violence. They're trying to make us a bit more, I guess you would say, easy to go along with the plan. They're trying to kind of, placate us, make us a little bit more, I guess, used to these types of events taking place. So as I was examining the Wall Street Journal, I came across this op-ed article that had been published very recently, and I think this is a great example of just wartime propaganda, guys. If I start here, I can make some comments on these individual paragraphs and then see where things sum up. If I start up here, for 7 years, Mr. Obama has used the unpopularity of the Iraq War as a shield for his retreat from anti-terror leadership in the Middle East. His periodic drone strikes and his most notable security success, the Osama bin Laden raid, obscure the jihadist danger growing in the wake of America's departure from Iraq and abdication in Syria. So in this first paragraph, we're obviously insinuating that Obama hasn't done enough. I found the phrase periodic drone strikes to be very interesting. I did a quick Google search just to show you guys some graphic images because I've sort of done a lot of research on drones of my own, but you can see here casualty estimates in just a couple of countries here, Pakistan, Yemen. Do these look like the kind of numbers that result in periodic drone strikes, guys? Are these the kinds of statements that our leaders make that lead to more terrorists deciding to take up arms against innocent civilians? Yes, it is. Moving on to the next paragraph. Mr. Obama also deposed Gaddafi in Libya. Yeah, now we're just blatantly admitting that. A few years ago it was a natural uprising of the people, and now we all know that was bullshit, so they just put it out there in the press for us to read. Of course, now they're going to be talking about the Benghazi thing, and they try to make it look like it's, the usual political volleyball, but in reality, it was a gun running station. They found out about it, and they attacked us, and both parties in America, the Republicans and the Democrats, are covering for each other, but not reporting that. The Republicans make it look like it's a Hillary Clinton, cover-up. The Democrats make it look like it's a political witch hunt against Clinton because she's running for president, and meanwhile, nobody talks about the guns. It works out perfectly. So they talk more about this, quote-unquote infection from Islamic State going across here. They, talk some shit about Obama, kind of saying that ISIS wasn't going to be that big of a deal. We're talking about 9/11. Here's the paragraph that scares me, guys. France has been the target 3 times this year, counting the attack on a train foiled by 3 Americans. But America's day is coming. In May, FBI Director James Comey said there are thousands inside the U.S. who are absorbing Islamic State propaganda on the internet. So guys, when I see stuff like this, it just makes me think that the next false flag attack has so obviously been planned and so obviously the deals have been inked. We see these kinds of things in our own mainstream as mainstream gets, type of media here in America where they're talking about America's day is coming. We saw the Paris attack. In many ways, I think that the Paris attack serves 2 purposes. Now, these types of events always kind of happen in varying degrees. When Russia started attacking and launching more airstrikes in Syria, we had the Oregon shooting. That was mostly distraction. When you have events like that, they're a big deal. They're able to captivate the public, but not for a super long time. So an event like Oregon, I look at more like a distraction. Like I said, it holds the headlines in place. It distracts people. The headline isn't Syria for one day, but there isn't enough death and destruction and overall, horrifying events to make any large scale change. So that event comes and goes. The Oregon shooting, nobody's going to remember that, hardly at all a year from now, guys. It's just one of those things that is like a placeholder for that day. Now, the Paris attack, much like the Madrid bombing, the England bombing, these are also like medium scale placeholder attacks. They're not as big as 9/11, but they're big enough to affect actual change. For example, you see France is actually launching airstrikes. It allows them to justify to their people and to other Western countries more intervention because obviously other countries like Germany and the US can say, oh, it'll happen here if we don't do something about it. And on the other hand, obviously, a few hundred people is enough to make a difference more so than, a couple handfuls of people in Oregon. These are the varying degrees to which I see these events taking place within. Now, on the other hand, I don't see Paris obviously as a huge, gigantic, large-scale event, and it makes me wonder, does that mean that the next thing is already being planned and the next thing is coming, and that Paris was just there to kind of ramp us up to that, to make us feel that that event was a little bit more justified or expected? Oh, they hit Paris, so when it's 500 people in Germany or when it's another, 2 or 3,000 people in America, we're supposed to be, I guess, not as surprised. We're supposed to be, almost expecting it, almost laying in wait. And who's going to be there to save us, guys? Our government. They're going to be the ones who try to claim that they are the only ones there available to come out and save you. And all you have to do is decide, which political party is going to be your chosen representative. At the end of the day, these fear tactics are being used in order to not necessarily sway your opinion, guys, but to get you to give up your opinion, to get you to simply give up resisting, to be so afraid that you let the government make your decisions for you. And I think a lot of these events, guys, are staged, and I have to say it. I mean, I know that sometimes, I do my best to report the absolute facts, and I'll be the first to say that anytime that I speculate, which is what I'm doing at the end of this video, I'm going to try to be clear about it. I can't prove at this point that any of this stuff is staged, but it all just seems too perfect. Like I said in the beginning, I was literally having this conversation just a few short days ago, maybe a week ago at the very, very most, where I was saying, I really expect NATO, the West, whatever you want to say, to try to step up their airstrike game because Russia is hammering, these ISIS targets, these CIA Western ISIS targets, and I feel that they're going to try to, grab some more air superiority. And now you have this event in France, and what's the first thing France is saying? We're going to be coming in with more airstrikes. What's the first thing America's saying? We're going to be backing up France with their airstrikes. And of course, other countries like Turkey, so on and so forth, the UAE, they're more than happy to step in. And countries like Russia, because of, the propaganda, you have the Russian plane that blows up, and now you have this French terrorist attack. And in a way, countries like Russia, it sort of prevents them from being able to, I guess you would say, put their full political or geopolitical opinions out there in the media because otherwise they look insensitive. So if Russia were to try to make some comment about, oh, this is the result of, failed Western policy, it makes them look cold and insensitive in the face of this event. So quote unquote terrorist attacks, are a really nice way for governments to propagandize their people and to accomplish what you might call sort of psi operations while at the same time remaining immune to criticism. And I think that that's very key. So this is kind of an examination of the propaganda following the Paris attacks. It's not going to be the last that you see. And I hate to say it, guys, but I really think that more bullshit is coming. So let me know what you think, guys. We'll talk soon.